She graduated. Then the fun part started, which is, okay, now let's create this business. EQ. It is super important. Just be in the moment. Own your life, own your problems, work your way through them.
Have you ever lost your temper in front of your kids?
They won't say this, but they want to be you. If I could go back 25, 30 years, I'd go back. I'd say to myself,
This is Damien, level 8 director in Amazon. So a few years ago, your wife paused her career to take care of your kids. Then she runs her own business, and then now she's in Apple.
that's right.
What support did you provide from your side for her?
She wanted to stay at home for a while when the kids were younger. And we fortunately had the financial means to do that. But I think she always intended to get back into the workforce. And what ended up happening was when the kids got older and she wanted to get back into the workforce, she was very nervous about going back to a full-time job. But it's very difficult to get a part-time job in the corporate world.
Right. After a gap of a few years.
And she had been working at Microsoft. We both worked at Microsoft. So she had a certain sense of, well, the kind of work she wanted to do, but she couldn't really imagine a part-time job scenario. And so one of the things that I worked with her on is she couldn't quite decide what to do. I talked to her quite a bit about different options, and I was trying to be supportive to say, okay, here's something you might be able to do, here's something you might be able to do. I finally came to the conclusion, I said, look, I think what you might want to try is something where you can actually work part-time from home. And I said, I think you might want to consider actually starting your own business. And she said she was very nervous about it. She's like, I don't know if I want to start a business. I don't know if I want to do that. It sounds too complicated. And I said, well, let's figure out something that you're interested in, something you have a passion for, and then let's just work together to figure out what a path might be.
Yeah.
So over the course of the next number of weeks, I think it was a few weeks or a couple months, I remember, we would sit down and we would I would throw out ideas. I'd say, well, you like to do this, you like to do that, you like to do this. Well, could we make a business
out of
what
that? She's good at it.
Yeah.
What she likes.
Exactly. It was just more zeroing in on...
To learn more about herself.
Exactly. And where we ended up landing was, she likes knowing what's going on. My wife is very intrigued by how people interact and what they do and stuff like that. And somehow or another, we landed on the idea of a role where she could investigate or do like research on people or things. So think of an example where somebody wants to hire a nanny to work in their house, or a housekeeper or something like that, somebody to watch their kids. And oftentimes, you're nervous about somebody you don't know coming into your home. Yeah. So she said, well, I could do background checks. I could go research these people to figure out if they're, make sense to hire.
Yeah.
And so with that, she thought about other scenarios where she could offer these kind of services, and eventually she started. But she needed. I remember the other thing I mentioned to her is I said, "Look, you probably need some kind of formal training or formal certification or something so that you're credible in this business."
Right.
So we looked around. She eventually found a program at the UW. It was a private investigation. It was a year-long program where you get certified as a private investigator. It's through the University of Washington. So she eventually did that. She did that for a year and graduated. I can't remember, but it was a fair amount of work. Like there were classes and stuff. And so, we had to figure out how we could adjust schedules to make that work. But she graduated. Then the fun part started, which is, okay, now let's create this business. So we spent probably 3 or 4 months just putting together a business plan, like, a classic business plan. What's the business? Who's going to be the customer? What is the services you're going to offer? What kind of money would you charge? And so we actually built a business plan together.
Cool.
We had to figure out what the company is going to be called. We had to set up a website.
That takes a lot of time, though.
A lot of time. She was doing the hard work, doing the training and all that certification, but I was helping with setting up the website and stuff. So I would say it was a partnership.
Did you say you set up the website?
Yeah, I set up a website for her, and
That's sweet.
I was doing the technical work, so to support her business, because she's technical, but not. It was just sharing the work.
Yeah.
And then we eventually launched it, or she launched it, and ran that. She ran the business for 3 or 4 years, and she had quite a few clients and customers. She had a few attorneys that she worked for.
Yeah.
It was basically a partnership. We put the whole thing together. And one of the things I told her at the beginning, or I suggested, was, I said, even if You don't make a ton of money doing this. Your marketability, once you do decide to go back to the corporate world, if you choose to do that, it's going to be much higher.
Yeah.
Because when you look at a resume and you see that somebody has started their own business and ran their own business, that shows initiative. That shows a level of understanding and skill and knowledge that you don't find in a lot of people. So it worked out brilliantly. When she decided to eventually go back to the corporate world, shut her business down, she went to work for Microsoft, worked on a contract with Pinkerton, and eventually ended up at a company at Amazon, working as a contractor with a company called At Risk, and then eventually Amazon hired her on full-time as a corporate security. And eventually she went to work for Children's Hospital. So just a series of additional changes as a corporate investigator, and now she's at Apple.
Yeah.
So
does she enjoy her job now?
She does. We were talking about how much she enjoys the job, and she never imagined she'd be doing this kind of work, but she's in a very important role, which is she has to, when there's an issue in the work environment, she gets to understand all the details, she gets to figure out all the facts, she gets to make recommendations on what happens in those situations. And so she finds it very satisfying. But if you had asked her, 20 years ago, I think she has a communications degree, I think it's her degree from university, whether or not she'd be doing this kind of work 20, 30 years ago, she would have probably said, no, that doesn't make any sense. But I think sometimes life just takes you down a path. I knew that she wanted to have that balance when the kids were younger, right? Have that opportunity to kind of be at home more.
Do you think men and women in tech face different trade-offs between career and family?
Absolutely. There's no doubt. Tech can be a very fun place to be. I love technology, but it's also fast-paced. There's a lot of high expectations. There's a lot of competition. There's always this pressure that if you don't stay in the game fully engaged, that somehow you're going to fall behind. And I think women tend to find, if they want to have children and they want to take care of them or take some time off, they oftentimes feel like that's going to slow them down or that they're going to lose opportunities. The good news is, I think, over the years, from the start of my career to today, I think companies and people are much, much more understanding that if you're playing the long game, meaning if you're trying to build a company for the long term, you want to have great employees and you want to keep them for a long period of time, because the more they stay with you, the more they know, the more experience they have. If somebody needs to take some time off, whether it's to have a baby or take care of his kids at home, that is perfectly normal. And it's better in a way. When they do eventually come back, assuming they come back and work in the office again, they're going to feel even more dedicated to the company because they were given that opportunity. When you're a company like Amazon, we have or any tech company, you got a lot of really smart people, and people have very strong personalities. And so another challenge can be, if you're not an A-type personality, right? If you're not a more aggressive personality, how do you work with people that are, right? How do you do that balance? But that's where I think EQ is super important, because everybody brings something different to the table. And this is management 101, but if you hire everybody that's exactly like you into your team, you will fail.
Yeah.
You will fail. You need diversity of opinions and ideas and approaches. So I think there are differences in the work environment, but I do think the industry has gotten much better over the years.
So what values or gifts do you hope to pass on to your kids when they were young?
One of them is treat people like you want to be treated. I think I already talked about that. If you want to be successful in life, you want to take control and own it. If you run into a roadblock or obstacle, it's easy to sometimes, find other reasons why that's happening.
Excuses.
Yeah. And so I think it's super important to own your life. Don't blame other people for your failures. It's yourself. Even if somebody puts you in a position that might not be good for you, ignore it. Just focus on your own life. Just don't think that all of your challenges are due to other people's actions.
Yeah, because that will prevent you from growing yourself.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, own your life, own your problems, work your way through them. So that's a really important thing. And then the other thing I try to teach my sons is just have curiosity about everything,
Yeah.
Because the world's moving so fast. I try to keep up to date on all the latest technology. I like to listen to the most modern music I can. I like to understand what young people are doing. So I want to always be in the era.
Yeah.
I don't want to be somebody who is always thinking about things 30 years ago. I want to be in the current era, the current generation. Just be in the moment.
So have you ever lost your temper in front of your kids?
Yeah. Yes, most definitely, and not a lot. One example I remember specifically. By the way, not a lot, because I'm a fairly even-keeled, mellow person.
Nice.
Thankfully, my wife is pretty mellow as well. But there was one time I remember in particular. My sons were younger. We had I would say a family room in our home where there's TV and speakers and you could watch movies and stuff. And right above that was one of my son's room.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'd be trying to watch a movie and unwind, just relaxing in the evening. I would try to keep the volume down because I didn't want him to be bothered.
They already fall asleep? Is it
No. What
nighttime,
happened is Hunter, my younger son, he would come downstairs. It turns out we discovered later in life that he had a sleeping issue that we didn't know about because, I didn't have the TV up that loud, but he kept coming back down and saying, "Please turn it down." And so I look back and I say, I wish, you can't really rewind those things, right? But I wish I had not gotten angry. Well, first of all, you just try to next time understand that, there must be something else that's causing him to be irritated. Something was bothering him about the sound, and I didn't know what it was because it didn't seem like a big deal to me. So I think the way, I think in hindsight, I remember I was always trying to be a little more careful next time. I don't personally believe in the word "I'm sorry." When people say, "Well, I'm sorry," and they hope that fixes a problem.
Yeah.
It's fine if people say they're sorry about something, but sorry doesn't fix a problem. What fixes a problem is an action.
Right.
So instead of saying, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm sorry I had the TV up too loud," blah, 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 probably the better approach would be, okay, clearly something was bothering you. I got a little upset about the fact that you were asking me about it. Let me see if I can dissect and figure out what it is that's actually bothering you and and try to avoid it in the future. As opposed to just saying, "Well, I'm sorry about that," and then it happens again. So fortunately, there's very few times where I think I kind of lost my temper. But I will say that when it did happen, it usually wasn't really about what my boys were doing. It was more about probably just pressure or stress. When you're outside of the work environment, you oftentimes you can't really turn it off. So oftentimes you might lose your temper at some small thing and not even realize that it had nothing to do with that small thing. It's good to have somebody else who can check you on that and say, "Hey, that wasn't that big a deal." Like if you have your spouse or something can kind of call you and say, "Hey, why did you do that?" Right? That's helpful.
If you could speak to your 25-year-old self, what would you say?
When I was younger, I had pretty good strategic sensibilities. I think I was actually pretty good at understanding the big picture and thinking longer term. I think I had a lot of really great ideas when I think about various jobs and roles I was in, about how we could fundamentally strengthen the business or build better products. If I go back maybe 25, 30 years, I didn't feel like I had the right or position to say a lot of that stuff. I was mainly doing a job. If I could go back 25, 30 years, I'd go back. I'd say to myself, "You got great ideas. Tell people about your ideas.
Stick to your ideas.
Be more bold. Share your ideas. Speak up. Don't just do the job, but just be more vocal about what you think is the right thing to be doing or what the right thing for the business is." Because frankly, to be honest, I think a lot of people feel nervous about sharing their ideas, especially in a work environment.
When it's different from what already existing for years.
That's right.
Or senior told you.
Yeah. And so I'd probably tell myself to be much more vocal, because I remember cases where I had some really good ideas about things and I kind of would share them, but if I had shared them more strongly, it could have led to something even bigger. Trust yourself. Trust your gut.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.